All right, welcome to another deep dive. This time we're tackling The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma. This one came straight from a listener request.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, and their story really resonated with me too. They're feeling a bit burnt out, looking for a change, but not sure where to even begin.
I can definitely relate to that. It's like you hit a certain point and realize, wait a minute, is this IT?
Exactly, and that's exactly what happens to Julian Mantle, the main character in the book. He's this super successful lawyer, living the high life, fancy suits, fast cars, you name it, but then, bam, heart attack, right there in the courtroom.
Talk about a wake-up call. It's like your body's way of saying, hey, something's got to change.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And that's where the real journey begins. Julian decides to just walk away from it all, sells his Ferrari, his mansion, everything, and heads to India to figure things out.
So he trades in the material world for something. Spiritual.
Exactly. He ends up in this hidden Himalayan village called Savannah. It's like something out of a dream. Houses made of roses, people radiating peace and youthfulness, the whole thing.
It's interesting how the book uses this contrast, right? The hectic Western world versus this tranquil Eastern setting.
Totally. And in Savannah, Julian meets this group of sages who've mastered these ancient techniques for happiness and fulfillment. He basically becomes their student.
So it's like he goes from lawyer to wisdom seeker.
Yeah, something like that. And the main sage, Yogi Raman, well, he teaches Julian through this really captivating fable. It's got gardens, lighthouses, sumo wrestlers, all sorts of wild imagery.
Ah, so instead of straightforward lectures, it's more like a story with hidden meanings.
Right. And each element of the fable represents one of the 7 virtues the sages lived by. It's like a secret code for unlocking a more fulfilling life.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these virtues.
All right, well, the first one is mastering your mind. And that's represented by a beautiful garden in the fable. It's all about cultivating positive thoughts and weeding out the negative ones, just like a gardener tends to their plants.
So it's about being intentional with what we allow to grow in our minds.
Exactly. Because let's face it, it's so easy to get bogged down in negativity,
Yeah.
especially when you're feeling burnt out, right? But the sages teach us to actively choose thoughts that empower us, that lift us up.
Makes sense. It's like changing the channel in your mind, focusing on the good stuff.
Yeah. And the second virtue is all about following your purpose. And in the fable, this is symbolized by a towering red lighthouse.
So it's about finding your direction, that guiding light that leads you toward a meaningful life.
Exactly. And I think that's something our listeners are really struggling with, That feeling of being lost, not sure which way to turn.
It's tough when you're stuck in that rut, just going through the motions.
Right. But the third virtue, called kaizen, offers some hope. It's a Japanese term that means continuous improvement, and it's represented by a sumo wrestler in the fable, always striving to be better, stronger.
So taking small, consistent steps towards a goal, even if you're not entirely sure what that goal is yet.
Exactly. It's about building that momentum, that mindset of growth and progress. And eventually that can lead you towards discovering your true purpose.
I like that. It's like building the muscle of positive change, one small step at a time.
Yeah, and then we come to the fourth virtue, developing willpower, which is symbolized by a pink wire cable, of all things.
A pink wire cable? No, that's an interesting image.
Yeah, the idea is that one single wire might seem weak, but when you weave them together, you create this incredibly strong cable. And it's the same with willpower. Each act of self-discipline, no matter how small, strengthens our resilience.
It's like those tiny daily wins add up over time, making us better equipped to face bigger challenges.
Right. And then we come to the fifth virtue, respecting your time. No surprises here. It's represented by a gold stopwatch.
Time, our most precious resource. Something we can never get back once it's gone.
Exactly. And the sages teach us to treat it that way, to prioritize what truly matters, eliminate distractions, and really live with intention.
So it's not just about time management, it's about understanding the value of our time and using it wisely.
Absolutely. And I think this is especially relevant for our listener who mentioned wanting more family time. It's about making conscious choices about how we spend our days.
It's like giving ourselves permission to say no to things that drain our energy and yes to things that nourish our souls.
And then we have the sixth virtue, which is all about serving others selflessly. And this one is symbolized by beautiful yellow roses.
Yellow roses, that's lovely. So it's about contributing to something greater than ourselves, making a positive impact on the world.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be some grand heroic act. Even small acts of kindness, showing up for someone in need, can make a huge difference.
It's about recognizing our interconnectedness, how our actions ripple outwards and affect others.
And finally, we come to the seventh virtue, which is embracing the present moment. And this one is represented by a shimmering diamond path.
Ah, the diamond path, the path to true happiness. It's about savoring each step, appreciating the beauty and wonder of now, rather than dwelling on the past or worrying about the future.
Exactly. It's about finding those moments of joy in our everyday lives, no matter how small they might seem.
It sounds like a lot to take in, all these virtues.
It is. But remember, it's a journey, not a destination. And like you said earlier, it's about those small, consistent steps that lead to transformation.
Right, one step at a time. And maybe, just maybe, those steps lead us down that shimmering diamond path.
So we've got these seven virtues, this whole blueprint for a better life. But how do we actually, make it happen? The book doesn't just leave us hanging with these concepts, right?
Oh, definitely not. The monk who sold his Ferrari is all about practical application. It's packed with techniques and ritual that Julian learns from the sages.
And these aren't just for, hardcore yogis or something. I mean, the book's a bestseller. It's got to have stuff that regular people can actually use.
Absolutely. One of the things that struck me was how simple a lot of the techniques are. Like there's this one called the Heart of the Rose. It's a meditation for finding peace of mind.
Okay, how does that work?
Basically, you just focus all your attention on a single rose. You observe its beauty, the fragrance, all the little details.
Wait, seriously, just looking at a rose, how's that supposed to help with all the crazy stress we deal with every day?
It's about training your mind, right? We're so used to being bombarded with distractions, our attention's pulled in a million directions. This practice helps you bring it back to the present moment. You quiet all that mental noise and create space for peace and clarity.
Huh. Like a mental workout for focus. Speaking of workouts, the book talks a lot about physical well-being, too.
Right, but it's not about pushing yourself to the limit or getting ripped. The sages see exercise as a way to connect with your body, to move with joy and intention.
More like yoga in the park than pumping iron at the gym.
Exactly. It's about finding activities that energize you both physically and mentally. Walking in nature, dancing, whatever brings you that sense of flow.
Okay, that I can get behind. There's one technique, though, that I'm still kind of wrapping my head around. It's called the secret of the lake.
Oh, that's a good one. It's all about the power of visualization.
Yeah, the sages would go to this serene lake at dawn, and while looking into the water, they'd vividly imagine their goals and dreams, almost like they were already happening.
Right. It's not just daydreaming. It's about intentionally creating a detailed mental picture, feeling the emotions, truly believing it.
Do you think there's something to this whole manifesting thing? Like, can we really think our desires into reality?
It's interesting how much research there is now on the power of visualization. When you create a clear image of what you want, it actually primes your brain to recognize opportunities and make choices that align with that vision.
Huh, okay, I'm adding Secret of the Lake to my to-do list.
Mm.
But beyond visualization, the book also talks about, actually taking action.
Right, you got to put in the work. And for that, the sages have this principle called the ancient rule of 20. It's based on the idea that 80% of our results come from just 20% of our efforts.
Oh, like that Pareto principle thing.
Yeah.
So it's about figuring out those high-impact actions and focusing your energy there.
Exactly. Cut out the busy work, the stuff that doesn't really move the needle, and prioritize those tasks that bring both results and a sense of accomplishment.
Especially when you're feeling burnt out. That's got to be key.
Yeah.
Focusing on what matters, which actually reminds me of another concept from the book, the whole deathbed mentality thing.
Oh, yeah, that one can be a little jarring at first.
Right. Like, are we supposed to be thinking about dying all the time?
Not exactly. It's more about using that perspective as a filter for your decisions. Ask yourself, if this were my last day, would I be spending it doing this?
Wow, that's intense, but also kind of brilliant. It forces you to really examine your priorities.
Right, absolutely. It helps you strip away all the superficial stuff and focus on what truly matters. And, speaking of starting your day right, the sages were big believers in early awakening. They'd wake up with the sun and use those early hours for personal growth and reflection.
I got to be honest, I am not a morning person, but I can see the appeal of starting the day feeling calm and centered instead of rushing out the door in a frenzy.
Right. It's about reclaiming that time for yourself before the demands of the day take over. And a book also talks about incorporating specific rituals into your daily life.
Like to create a routine that supports your well-being. Okay, give me some examples. I'm ready to take notes.
Well, one that stood out to me was embracing solitude. The sages believed that spending time alone, in quiet reflection, was essential for self-renewal.
I've always struggled with that. Being alone with my thoughts can feel kind of scary. But I can see how in our hyper-connected world, that stillness could be so valuable.
It's about creating space to listen to that inner voice, the one that often gets drowned out by all the noise. Another ritual that resonated with me was expressing gratitude.
Oh yeah, gratitude. We hear that one a lot.
Right. But the book really emphasizes making it a daily practice. The sages believed that cultivating gratitude was one of the most powerful ways to shift your perspective and experience greater joy.
So instead of focusing on what's wrong, you're training your mind to appreciate what's right, which you already have.
Exactly. And there are so many simple ways to incorporate gratitude into your life. Keeping a gratitude journal, writing thank you notes, or just taking a few moments each day to reflect on the good things, big and small.
It's like rewiring your brain to see the
Yeah.
good, the abundance that's already there. Okay, what else? What other rituals did the sages practice?
Well, they were also big on nourishing their bodies with natural whole foods. They believed that what you eat directly impacts your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being.
Makes sense. I know when I eat healthy, I just feel better overall. Less sluggish, more energy, definitely less grumpy. So it's about seeing food as fuel, not just for the body, but for the mind and spirit too.
Precisely. Then there's the ritual of reading inspiring and enriching material. The sages were voracious readers, constantly seeking knowledge and wisdom.
So it's about being a lifelong learner, always expanding your horizons. Love that.
And of course, they emphasize personal reflection, taking time each day to review their actions, their progress, areas for improvement.
Like a daily check-in with yourself,
Yeah.
analyzing what went well, what could be better, and how to stay aligned with your values.
Exactly. They also started each day with a positive affirmation or mantra, setting the tone for a successful and fulfilling day.
It's like programming your mind for positivity right from the start. Powerful stuff.
And then there's the ritual of living a life of simplicity. Letting go of material clutter, unnecessary commitments, anything that drains your energy or distracts you from your purpose.
The minimalist approach. It's about focusing on what truly matters and letting go of the rest. Less is more, right?
Exactly. And finally, the 10th ritual was all about expressing gratitude.
Wait, didn't we already talk about gratitude?
We did, but it's so important. It gets its own ritual, and it's woven into the fabric of their entire philosophy. It's about cultivating that constant awareness of the good in your life.
So it's not just a one-time thing. It's an ongoing practice, a way of life. Makes sense.
Right. It's about appreciating the abundance that surrounds us, even amidst challenges. So as you can see, these rituals weren't just random actions. They were intentional practices designed to cultivate a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
It's a lot to incorporate all at once. But I guess it goes back to that Kaizen thing, right? Small steps, consistency, and eventually those small changes add up to something big.
Exactly. It's about weaving these practices into your daily routine, making them a natural part of your life.
Wow, we've covered a ton in this deep dive on the monk who sold his Ferrari. That's like a toolkit for, well, building a better life,
Definitely a lot to unpack. It's amazing how much wisdom is woven into that story, even with all the mystical elements.
Yeah, those talking roses and giant sumo wrestlers definitely add some color. But for me, it keeps coming back to that idea of like really embracing the present moment. That feels like the foundation for everything else.
Totally agree. That diamond path, that's where true happiness lies. And you can only walk it one step at a time, in the now.
It's so easy to get stuck in regretting the past or stressing about the future. But the sages teach us that the real joy, it's in savoring each experience as it unfolds. I read somewhere that people are actually happier when they're fully present in what they're doing, even if it's something boring, than when their minds are wandering all over the place.
That makes sense. It's like all that mental chatter just steals our joy, right? That's why mindfulness has gotten so popular. It's about bringing your attention to the present moment without judgment and just experiencing it fully.
So it's not about forcing happy thoughts or anything. It's more about noticing what right here, right now.
Exactly. And gratitude plays a big role in that. When you practice gratitude, you're basically training your mind to focus on the good stuff, the blessings that are already present.
You mentioned you keep a gratitude journal. Has that actually made a difference in how you experience things?
It really has. It's made me so much more aware of those little moments of joy that I used to take for granted. A beautiful sunset, a good cup of coffee, just a simple conversation with a friend.
It's like you've developed a whole new appreciation for the simple things.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes me think about Julian, the lawyer. He had all the success, all the material wealth he could want, but he was miserable.
Yeah, he was so caught up in achieving, he missed out on those precious moments with his daughter. Like, he forgot how to actually live.
It's a cautionary tale, right?
Mhm.
Reminds us that real fulfillment, it doesn't come from stuff or status. It comes from inner peace and those deep, meaningful connections.
Which can be tough, right? When the world's constantly telling you to do more, have more, be more.
For sure. But the sages had a great antidote to the principle of simplicity. They believed that all that clutter, the possessions, the commitments, it just weighs you down.
It's like we're all chasing this idea of having it all, but then we end up missing the point entirely.
Yeah, sometimes letting go is the key to finding what truly matters. Remember that technique Julian learned? Opposition thinking.
Oh, right, where you basically fight negative thoughts with positive ones. Do you think that actually works? Like, can we really control our thoughts that much?
It's not about control, it's more about awareness. You notice the negative thoughts popping up, and you consciously choose to focus on something positive instead.
So it's like building a mental muscle for positivity.
Exactly. And the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. You're literally rewiring your brain for happiness.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And it all comes back to being present, right? When you're fully engaged in the now, you're less likely to get trapped in those negative thought loops.
Totally. You can just observe the thoughts without judgment and choose to focus on what serves you. And that's where service comes in too. When you shift your focus from your own problems to helping others, that's where you find a whole new level of joy and meaning.
You know, the listener who requested this deep dive, they mentioned feeling a lack of purpose. Maybe exploring ways to serve others could be helpful for them.
I think that's a brilliant idea. Even small acts of kindness can make a huge difference. Volunteering, mentoring, just lending a hand to a neighbor, all those things ripple outwards.
Right, it goes back to that interconnectedness we talked about. Our happiness is tied to the happiness of others. We're all in this together.
Exactly.
Well, as we wrap up, I keep picturing our lives as these like giant mosaics. Every choice we make, every action we take, it adds another piece to the picture.
That's a beautiful image. It reminds us that we're the artists of our own lives, and we have the power to create something truly beautiful and meaningful.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the monk who sold his Ferrari. I hope our listener finds some inspiration and guidance on their own journey.